TCU men's tennis, they brought it home. They're the national champions. Also, what will the offensive line look like for TCU football in 2024? That's all coming up next here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's right, Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I'm your host, Steven Simcox. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe to the YouTube channel or your favorite podcast platform. I am never going to come on here and try to BS you guys and be an expert in something that I'm not. I'm always forthright and honest. I'm here to cover TCU sports. I am not a tennis expert. I don't know a ton about the sport. I'm a casual viewer, but I love TCU. And I know enough about college sports to understand what type of intangibles and qualities make up a really good program. And David Roditi, through the years, TCU men's tennis coach, has built an incredible program. He's built a program that's tough-minded, that knows how to face adversity, that is consistently very good. And yes, they're also really talented. I mean, Jack Pennington-Jones, I think, is going to be a name we hear for a while in the tennis world. There are other guys on that roster that I feel like could really make a name for themselves beyond just collegiate tennis. They're a very, very talented group. It's also clear that they have the intangibles you want from champions. They know how to handle adversity. They're gritty. They're tough. Whatever gets thrown their way, they're going to try to handle it and make it a battle and make it a fight every time they go out there and take on somebody in a match. And they've been close the last few years. They got upset in 2022 by Kentucky in the quarterfinals. Last season, they lost in the Final Four to Ohio State. But they won their first outdoor NCAA national championship in program history yesterday. And you might say to yourself, wait, I thought they'd won some indoor titles. They have. The difference is the indoor title, which is a tournament that the ITA puts on each year. It's not an NCAA run event. So it's still a really big deal. It's an invitational, but from what I can tell, they take basically the top 16 teams in the country, put them in this tournament, and say, hey, let's play some indoor tennis. And TCU won that national title 2 years in a row. They got beat by Ohio State earlier this year in that tournament, though, in the championship. And so this outdoor season was sort of a revenge tour of sorts. I don't know if that's what they set it out to be, but it kind of became that. They beat Kentucky in the quarterfinals. They beat Ohio State in the Final Four. They lost the doubles point to Ohio State. The way college tennis works, you got 3 doubles matches. Whoever takes 2 out of 3 in those matches gets the doubles point, so that's 1 point. And then you have 6 singles matches, and it's the first one to get to 4. So if you lose the doubles point, it doesn't mean you're out, but then it means you have to win 4 out of the 6 singles matches instead of 3 out of the 6 to win the match. So they dropped the doubles point to Ohio State. Ohio State's known for having a really deep singles team from people that follow the sport closely from what I've developed. Horned Frog Blitz has a really good community of people that run tennis threads and kind of update it. I wish I could give them personal shout outs, but I just kind of know their usernames. But anyway, I follow that. I was watching the Final Four and then the championship match on Sunday, but they found a way against Ohio State. They battled back. They won their matches. They ended up advancing to the national title round where they took on Texas. And Texas is the number 2 overall seed. Ohio State was number 1. Texas is another very good program. They got the doubles point from Texas, and it came down to Seb Gorsny, third set. I believe it was on court 5. It's tied up 3-3. It comes down to this match. They're in a deciding third set, and Seb got it done. He hit an ace on a serve to end it, and the team mobbed him. And I'll tell you, man, it was pretty electric. Like, watching that on ESPN Plus yesterday, it doesn't take an expert to know that's high-level tennis that's being played and that's happening. And, I mean, they once again, you know, it was touch and go at times. It looked like they might end up losing that, but they just found a way. They grinded it out. Seb found a way to come back and win set 1 after falling behind. Jack Pennington-Jones, he dropped his first set and then stormed back and won the next 2 to win that match. Lou won his match in straight sets to get the Frogs a point. And it was so cool watching those guys celebrate when it was known that they had won the national championship yesterday. And what a moment for David Roditi. He's been close a few times. He played tennis at TCU. He's an alum. He loves the school. He built this thing in some ways from the ground up to be what it is today. And the Frogs end up as national champs. So I wanted to take the moment to congratulate them today in the opening segment because it's a big deal, man. Like, that's a grind of a tournament. You got to win 6 rounds. It's a field of 64 like just about everything else is in the NCAA. They had to beat the number 1 overall seed. They had to beat the number 2 overall seed, a Texas team that knew them very well. You could tell there was a lot of respect between those two programs, and just the fact that both teams are really good. Jack threw up the horns down after winning his match, which was a fun moment. And it was cool to watch it. Congratulations to them. I'm going to be decked out in tennis merch soon because I want to rep those guys. And it's just awesome for TCU. It's been an unexpected year. You know, football team didn't exactly do what we wanted. I think basketball ended up in a roundabout way kind of meeting expectations, but I know people are frustrated with the first round exits. Baseball, we'll see. They dropped the series to West Virginia this weekend. Hopefully they can sneak in the postseason and make a run, but right now it doesn't feel super hopeful in that regard. But the men's tennis team, they're national champs, and they had to battle to get there. They found a way. It was a process. There were some ups and downs. There were some losses the last few years that were somewhat unexpected and that could have been setbacks. They dealt with injuries this season. They weren't always at full strength, but they got everybody healthy at the right time. They played their best tennis at the right time, and they're coming home as champs. So congratulations to David Roditi and his squad for bringing it home for TCU and getting that first official NCAA national title. They have won a couple indoor titles, though, which is really cool as well. When we come back, I'll talk some football. We'll get to the O-line room. That's coming up next on Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team every day. If you need talent for your business, hiring is a big deal. You got to find the right people. If you don't, it can cause major headaches. LinkedIn is a job board to use because everybody uses LinkedIn when they're trying to find work. That's where you're going to find the most talented people in the job market. It's not just any other job board. They help you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else. Even those who aren't actively searching for a new job and might be open to the perfect role. 70% of LinkedIn users do not visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows small businesses are wearing so many hats, and people might have the time or resources to hire. They're constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process easier and quicker. 2.5 small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. So I've been doing this series post-spring camp with the football team. Let's reset the board and let's talk about where the roster is for football in different rooms, different settings. Because with all the movement in the transfer portal, you might think, okay, who's playing receiver this year for the Frogs? Who's playing DB? Those are the two that we've gone over so far. Today I'm going to talk about the offensive line. And you might roll your eyes a little bit because if you listen to the show frequently, you probably have a pretty good handle on who the main players are on the O-line because I've talked about it at length this offseason. I think this is really the key to the offense. I feel like the offense is pretty set at the skill positions. Yes, you have some inexperience at running back. That's difficult. Yes, your quarterback, you wish Josh Hoover could have gone through spring camp, but I still think there's a chance that he's got some good potential to grow and develop there and take a step from year one where he was, a starter for half of the season. But the place where the big question marks lie for me is you have an offensive line that once again this year is going to do a lot of mixing and matching. It appears they're going to build this thing mainly through the transfer portal. Can they come together quickly and be a cohesive unit that allows Josh Hoover time to make throws and opens up space in the run lanes for these running backs to work and do well in 2024? So we'll start with who's coming in from the transfer portal. Bless Harris from Florida State. So the story on Bless Harris, he started his career at Lamar. He transferred to Florida State for the past 2 seasons, which Florida State's had some really good teams the past couple of years. When he's healthy, he's been the Noles starting left tackle. And he's allowed 1 sack last year when he was on the field. The question with Bless is he's dealt with some injuries through his career. Is he going to be healthy? Is he going to be ready to go? But if Bless Harris is healthy and he is ready to rock and roll when the season starts, I feel like he's your starting left tackle when the season gets underway. They also brought in James Brockermeyer, brother of Tommy Brockermeyer. Tommy medically retired this offseason after spending 1 year at TCU. James also coming over from Alabama. He was the starting center for the Crimson Tide during spring camp. And then he transferred after spring camp was over. Now, Kalen DeBoer, the new coach from Washington, he brought in a center from Washington, and word on the street was he was probably going to get the starting job. James, in that case, would have fell back to the running with the twos, and I guess he thought this was a better opportunity for him to play, and he decided to move on after going through spring camp with the Crimson Tide. He played a lot on special teams last year. He's been a part of the two deep at Alabama for a few seasons, which shows a lot of promise. The big question I have, or it's not really a concern, it's just kind of what's the coaching staff going to do? He can play center, so you could put him at that center spot and feel good about him starting. But Colton Deary was running at the center position during TCU spring camp. So James is an interior offensive lineman. Do you slide him over to the guard spot and let him take that position and leave Colton at center? Do you put him at center and move Colton to one of the guard positions? A theme here that we'll get to while we go through this and who's leaving, who's here, who's returning. TCU looks pretty set on the interior offensive line, at least from a depth perspective. They have options. I think they've got a number of guys who could play quality snaps for them. Tackle is where it gets a little squirrely, but they've got the ability to kind of mix and match here. Speaking of the interior offensive line, Carson Bruno, another transfer from La Tech. He was a starter for Louisiana Tech the past couple seasons. Now, he played tackle at Louisiana Tech, but he worked at guard during the spring for TCU, and it appears he might be moving to the inside and playing at one of those guard spots during the 2024 season. So he's another name to watch in the interior offensive line. So is Remington Strickland. He was at Texas A&M for a few seasons, working with, their two deep snaps at Power 5 school, but was highly regarded coming out of high school and played in a good program at A&M for a few years. Cade Bennett is one of the best interior offensive linemen in the portal. He missed spring practice, finishing up some classes at San Diego State. He'll come in this summer as a grad transfer. So, at those guard spots and potentially at center as well, you've got Brockermeyer, you've got Carson Bruno, Remington Strickland, Cade Bennett. There's some returners that could slide into maybe a few of those spots as well. Colton Deary. I feel like they're pretty good in the interior O-line. At least they can cobble together 3 guys who can be quality starters for this team. But you got to figure out tackle as well. Now, who did you lose this offseason to the transfer portal at that O-line spot? Ezra Dotson-Otade from Arizona State. He transferred in a few off seasons ago. Was a center guard type. Didn't really see much playing time. TCU brought in another center at the end of that second portal window. He saw the writing on the wall, moved on. Breon Ramsey-Brooks, Big Bubba, intriguing prospect because of his just sheer size. Was listed at 455 last year. Was a name to know as a true freshman because of that. Didn't see the field. I think after one season, they both kind of decided, okay, it's probably better if we move on. So you lose a couple depth guys there, but neither of those players I expected necessarily to start this upcoming season. I thought Atade might have a chance, but he didn't really get a lot of run during spring camp from what I could see. Losses to graduation. The 2 guys that were big-time starters, Brandon Coleman, who's your do-everything guy, dealt with injuries last year, but he's been the Frogs' best offensive lineman for the past 2 seasons. And Andrew Coker, who's been one of your starters at tackle for the past 2 seasons as well. So you're losing those dudes, and you have to replace that experience and that production with this group this upcoming season. Those are big losses because those guys have been starters for the past 2 seasons for the Frogs on the. As far as your guys that are returning, I talked about Colton Deary earlier, who was your starting center during spring camp, played a lot of meaningful snaps last year as well. I think there's a good chance Colton takes a big step forward this upcoming year. Ben Taylor Whitfield, another guy that got kind of thrown in the fire last season. And at the time, it was kind of exciting. It was like, hey, this true freshman is getting some run, right, because of some injuries. But I think in reality, it was sort of a concerning state of the O-line room that, I mean, not Ben's fault. Like, I feel like he did the best he could in the situation. But the fact that you had to start a true freshman or had to give a true freshman a lot of meaningful snaps as soon as somebody went down spoke to the lack of depth. And this is the big thing. They're still trying to build this back up from the end of the Gary Patterson era where it was really rough. And they kind of lucked out in 2022 with a very experienced group that stayed healthy throughout the season. And then I think you started to see the lack of quality depth there this past season. Mike Stoker, who was a big-time recruit for them a few years ago. Quentin Harris, who's kind of been in and out of the lineup at times. Mike Nichols, he's another one of those key guys that tackle spot. Who's going to be the tackle on the other side of Bless Harris? And, is it Mike Nichols? Is it possibly Ben Taylor Whitfield? Do they have more than just one player who can step into that role if need be? Robbie Rochester transferred in from UConn a couple off seasons ago. He also is a tackle prospect. And then Cooper Powers, who was in his second year and seemed to make some good progress and, did some running with the ones and twos during spring camp this offseason. True freshmen that are coming in. Mitch Hodnett is already on campus. He was an early enrollee. Tobias Steps, who's a tackle prospect they like a lot, really raw physically. He's built like a very athletic tackle. Crease Brister from Stephenville. Wesley Harvey, who's the super athletic tackle out of Oklahoma that they kind of found out of nowhere. Ryan Hughes, and then Samir Camacho. All those guys. Here's the thing with true freshman offensive linemen. That's going to be the key for TCU moving forward. For the future of the program to be solid and consistently year in and year out be good, you have to start developing those guys. I don't really expect much from them this year. Again, I feel like if you're having to throw true freshmen out there for quality starts at that position, then things have gone awry. And so I would say I wouldn't expect a lot from those guys last year, but that's going to be the key now. And they've done a good job of being aggressive both through the portal and in the high school ranks and trying to just get a lot of guys in the room. And then it's sort of just a numbers game of, okay, who's going to make it through the first couple of years of strength and conditioning and building their body up and getting their self physically in a good place where they can play. And then, all right, working on technique. What does it look like for these players? How do we get their feet right? How do we get hand placement? All that stuff figured out. And who ends up stepping up and being a quality player for them moving forward. So that's the key now, is getting these young guys up to speed as quickly as possible. But for these true freshmen, I personally don't expect it to be this year. I think it's more 2025 that we're looking at those players making an impact. When we come back, TCU baseball dropped 2 out of 3 to West Virginia over the weekend. We'll talk about where they are in the postseason and everything else next here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. FanDuel, man, how about the Dallas Mavericks advancing to the Western Conference Finals? The Stars also in the Western Conference Finals. NBA and NHL playoffs going on right now. You can bet on those sports at FanDuel.com/lockedon. If you're a new customer, I can tell you how you can easily make some money. I promise. One $5 bet, win or lose, you'll get $150 in bonus bets. So whether you win or lose that first bet, you can guarantee that you'll have $150 in bonus bets. If you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon or download the FanDuel app, FanDuel, it's where the game starts. Proud sponsor of the Locked On Network. MLB options as well. NFL and college football future bets. That's all available to you at FanDuel.com/lockedon or on the FanDuel app. Proud sponsor of the Locked On Network. So it's always tricky when we come back from the weekend because baseball is a sport that is defined by series. So you either win a series or you lose a series. Individual games, I mean, they make a difference, obviously. They add up at the end of the day, but individual games are kind of their own thing. And just because you take one game out of a series doesn't mean, we can come on here and just give out heaps of praise over after the weekend wraps up. But I wanted to say this because ultimately TCU lost their series against West Virginia. They finished 9th in the Big 12, 14-16 overall record in conference play, which is unfortunate. I think their postseason hopes are teetering right now, and that might be a generous description of the situation. They really need to make a run in the Big 12 tournament. But Thursday night was really cool. Peyton Tolle took the mound again after taking some time to be with his family. He lost his mother last week after a long battle with cancer, and the team went up and supported him. They went to the funeral service, which was, I think, incredibly gracious of the program and just kind of speaks to who they are and what they're about. And he pitched an outstanding game on Thursday night in a huge situation. He comes in there. I mean, who knows where his mind is, but he was able to focus and just do his job at a really high level on Thursday. Went 7 innings, gave up 5 hits, 3 runs, walked 3, struck out 11 through 110 pitches. And there was a moment when he gave up a single in the 8th inning, and Kirk came out to take him out of the game. And he was emotional. Kirk gave him a big hug. His teammates gave him a big hug. And he went to the dugout, and everybody embraced him. And it was just such a great, I think, testimony for what a fantastic program that TCU baseball is and how they care about their players and just genuinely care about them as people and not just as baseball players, even though they're trying to find a way to make them the best players they can be, but also they care about these guys as people and they're involved in these young men's lives. And I just wanted to say congratulations to Peyton on an outstanding performance in the midst of what was a really tough personal situation, and I'm sure still is, after losing his mom, Gina. And he just went out there and did the job. And it was really cool to see the way the team supported him in that moment. And I know behind the scenes, they've been supporting him and his family as much as they can over the past few weeks. And the Frogs ended up winning that game 6-3. Ben Abelt came in and got out of a jam in the 8th inning. And then I saw today, actually, as soon as I started recording, Peyton Tolle was named the pitcher of the year in the Big 12 and the newcomer of the year in the Big 12. A well-deserved award for him. He's been an absolute ace pretty much all season long and has been just the dude on Friday nights that eats up innings and does outstanding things for them. So congrats to him on that, as well. As I know it's been a tough season for him personally, like with what's been going on in his life and with his family, a tough situation, but he's found a way to put together a great season on the baseball diamond despite all that. Turning the page a little bit, which it's hard to do that, and I don't want to sound insensitive, but there were more games that were played over the weekend, and unfortunately Frogs lost on Friday and Saturday. Saturday was a tough one. They fell behind 2-0 early, and then they ended up falling behind 6-1, left a bunch of people on base. Came back, though, in the 9th inning. They were down 6-2, got a little bit of a rally started, had the bases loaded down 6-4 with 1 out. Jack Arthur, nice piece of hitting, drove the ball in the gap, got a single, and it floated up in the air, and the center fielder dove and looked like he might make a play on it. And so it bounced, and the right fielder was backing him up, and so he picked it up on a hop and threw it in. And I still don't really know what all went down. The replay angle that I saw, you could see TJ Bruce throw the stop sign up, but Peyton Chantier had already rounded third base and looked like he was going to try to come home. TJ threw the stop sign up. He tried to go back to third. Well, Carson Bowen, who was on first, he motored around second, and he was coming to third base. And so now it's like, well, they're caught in a pickle. So Bowen tried to go back. Bowen was kind of caught up in a pickle. Peyton broke for home plate, try to, sneak in a run and score there. West Virginia made a nice play. Second baseman got into the catcher. They tagged him out. So they scored a run, but they didn't tie it up. And then it was 6-5 with runners on first and third. Brody Green struck out, and that was the end of the ball game. So TCU now 14-16 in Big 12 play, and they're the 9 seed in the Big 12 tournament. They're going to play West Virginia in the first game tomorrow at 12:30, and then they'll most likely get Oklahoma, the top seed in the Big 12, if they win that ball game tomorrow afternoon. And tournament situations are just going to be tough for this team because outside of Peyton Tolle, they don't really have a quality starter. You know, Cole Klecker had a rough start on Friday night. I assume Cademan Parker will probably get the opportunity on Tuesday. And then I don't know what they do Wednesday. And then hopefully if they make it to Thursday, Peyton can come back and pitch on normal rest. And we'll be able to do some good things for them. I did see this from the Lupton Drinking Club. D1 baseball at the moment still has the Frogs in the tournament. Now they have them in the College Station Regional as a 3 seed, which would mean, you know, they're there with Texas A&M, one of the best teams in the country. But at this point, it's just like get in the tournament and see what happens. So big time Big 12 tournament coming up for the Frogs as they need to win some games to try to solidify their postseason hopes. We'll keep an eye on that and everything else this week. It's Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team. We do it here every day.